20 years ago, the Cedar Fire raced through our county, killing 15 people and destroying thousands of homes. But it also brought out the best in San Diegans and led to changes that have saved lives moving forward. I'm Carlo Cicchetto. Here at CBS 8, we're telling your stories from that painful time and the hope in the aftermath. Our Steve Price starts off our special coverage with a look at how the fire started and its path of destruction.
You gotta go. You got about 2 minutes to get out of here. 2 minutes.
It burned over 270,000 acres.
If you can hear my voice, you are in danger and you need to leave the area immediately.
Destroyed more than 2,200 homes and killed 15 people.
Oh my God!
At the time, the Cedar Fire was the largest wildfire in California history. October 25th, 2003, a lost hunter intentionally starts the fire to try and signal rescuers. But right from the start, fire crews had many things working against them. For one, several fires were already burning across Southern California. That limited the resources. Plus, we were in extreme drought conditions. The brush was thick and dry, which made it easy for that fire that seemed to be in the middle of nowhere to quickly move toward neighborhoods. And making a bad situation worse, we had Santa Ana winds with gusts up to 60 miles an hour. It started around 5:40 p.m. in the Cleveland National Forest. The flames in rough terrain with no nearby roads, making ground access difficult. And state policy at the time cut off air support 30 minutes before sunset, so it was already too late for helicopters to perform water drops. Fueled by those Santa Ana winds, the flames headed straight toward the San Diego Country Estates in Ramona. By 3 in the morning, the fire continued to spread out of control toward the Barona Indian Reservation.
I just bought new couches, new leather plush couches.
And Lakeside, trapping people from the Wildcat Canyon area to the San Vicente Reservoir. The flames showed no mercy, killing 12 people who had little to no warning that this fire was heading their way. By now, the fire was moving in several directions at once, heading south into Blossom Valley.
I knew it was just heading our way.
It also moved west into Poway, burning 54 homes.
We gotta go!
And into Scripps Ranch.
It's terrible. It's scary.
Where it destroyed more than 150 homes.
You know, we never dreamed of that anything like this could happen around here.
Fire crews shut down Interstate 15, the smoke too thick to safely drive through, plus concern the fire would jump the freeway and spread all the way to the coast.
Out of here.
Around that same time, it was also moving into Tierra Santa, where nearly a dozen homes burned. By the afternoon, the winds changed directions.
One other thing, a lot of folks are hanging out here watching the fire. They've been told not to do that.
Pushing the fire into Alpine, where unfortunately the fire killed a woman who was trying to protect her home. From there, it moved into Harbison Canyon and Crest.
Hot dog?
Free hot dog.
Across the county, thousands of San Diegans forced from their homes with nowhere to go, so Qualcomm Stadium was quickly turned into an emergency shelter, the county coming together to help neighbors in need. Monday, October 27, 2003, the fire still burning out of control. But where the damage had already been done, some people were allowed back into their neighborhoods. These pictures from Scripps Ranch.
I feel like I'm someplace in hell.
Entire blocks gone.
It's hard to believe that it's so devastatingly gone. I thought maybe some stuff would survive, but it's sort of like it's like a war zone.
Meanwhile, the fire was still burning hot and fast in our local mountains. By the next day, the entire town of Julian and the surrounding communities were in trouble. Water drops helped, but homes were still going up in flames. And on October 29th, tragedy struck again. The fire trapped and killed 38-year-old Stephen Rucker, a firefighter who came here from Northern California to help us.
This is just a little bit west of Tavern Road.
The Cedar Fire was fully contained on November 3rd, and President Bush visited the destruction the next day.
I see the loss of a lot of material possessions. However, I see a strong spirit.
The fire was officially out December 5th. Steve Price, CBS 8.
2 decades later, there are still painful memories of the Cedar Fire for many. CBS 8's Abby Black sat down with a family in Crest who stayed and rebuilt their life after fire burned down their home. Making it even tougher, it was the second time they had lost their home to wildfire.
The Cedar Fire devastated the community of Crest, and 20 years later, many say it's a memory that they often don't like to talk about. But tonight, we sit down with the Halty family who shares with us their story of hope and how they had to rebuild twice.
It's hard to tell what's what.
For the first time in years,
That might have been our camper.
the Halty family watches the home video they recorded as they walked up Mountain View Road.
They wouldn't let anybody up the hill. So I said, okay, fine, I'm walking up the hill. I said, if you want to, you can shoot me.
This was one day after the Cedar Fire roared through their Crest neighborhood.
We didn't really comprehend that we were in the line of the fire at that time.
The video's so surreal, it takes them back to October 26, 2003.
I can smell the smoke.
They can still see the images of terrified families trying to evacuate.
So it was just a parade going down that hill of people, solid.
Despite his dementia and being on hospice, 84-year-old Don Halty vividly remembers this moment.
There was a bush there, and they drive around the bush in the park. I get out and I look, and I'm just seeing space. Where there once was a house, there's just space. Wow.
His daughter, Catherine Clare, was both pregnant and had a toddler. She and her husband lived next door to her parents.
This home that I grew up in was gone, and that was difficult.
Both of their homes were a pile of ash.
No birds, no chirping, just silence.
And no home.
I'm watching the freeway. Hear everybody going somewhere with some place to go. You know, I'd have no place to go.
And going to a store was painful.
I used to have this. I used to have that.
Don had gone through this before.
So we have the ashes of 2 houses down in our property that are buried.
30 years prior, he and his wife Barbara lost their home in the 1970 Laguna fire that destroyed more than 300 homes.
We didn't use the ladders to get down off the roof. We just jumped.
But rebuilding after the Cedar Fire was a lot harder.
What do you remember about the Cedar Fire?
Insurance companies.
Don spent a week in Sacramento lobbying against insurance companies so he and his neighbors could get more money to rebuild.
We got to know a lot of the people on the hill that we didn't know before.
It took both families almost 2 years to move into their new homes.
We had a lot of support.
The Cedar Fire remains one of the deadliest and most destructive fires in California history.
Day by day, you move forward, one step at a time.
Even after rebuilding, it took years to start healing.
When the kids started school, I didn't keep things. It took me a while to convince myself to hold on to some of their stuff. Because I kept on thinking, well, I'm going to lose it anyways.
But as they hold on to these memories.
That was his new car.
2 decades later, the loss of their belongings and home is still painful, but the foundation for their family is still here.
You remind yourself that we're still here. We still have each other, and that's what matters, really.
In Crest, Abby Black, CBS 8.
Responding to the Cedar Fire was an all-hands-on-deck situation. CBS 8's Heather Myers, whose first day at KFMB came during the fire, recently had the chance to talk to a San Diego firefighter who was also new on the job back then, and it was his first major fire that he ever responded to.
Chaos across San Diego County. The 2003 Cedar Fire was unlike anything anyone had ever seen here.
I remember waking up, going outside and just seeing kind of ash on all the cars. Even here in Pacific Beach, there was ash on cars and kind of a gray haze in the sky.
San Diego Fire Rescue Engineer Michael Silva will never forget the eerie start to that October morning. He was 24 years old and had just graduated from the Fire Academy. He vividly remembers the all call to grab his gear and head in to help.
I went to Station 28 and I had my gear, and they said, okay, go ahead and sit on the lawn over there. You're going to wait for an assignment.
Silva was so new that he and other probationary firefighters waited hours for an assignment and for an engine. The fire was growing larger, and so was the panic.
This was such a huge, chaotic event that the city and the department had really never seen anything to that magnitude. And so people were showing up, and they didn't have fire engines for them.
While still waiting, Silva says the day took yet another bizarre turn.
All of a sudden, you know, we hear this boom, and there's this smoke going up behind the station, and we hear there's a plane crashed over there. So it seemed like Armageddon. Planes are crashing, fires are burning.
Eventually, Silva and 11 other firefighters piled into an engine that typically seats 4. The group was sent to Tierra Santa, where our CBS 8 archive footage shows the fire was ripping through homes and condos.
They're burning right and left. We can't put them out. The water won't put the shingles out.
Police officers were even handing out equipment to the firefighters and trying to help. Resources were so limited. You can see firefighters using garden hoses.
You would go to a house that's on fire and do your best, and then you'd go to another one, you'd come back, and the one that you thought you put out was now totally up in flames.
Meanwhile, across town, veteran CBS 8 TV news anchor Barbar Lee Edwards was on the anchor desk nonstop for hours. As a rookie reporter, I walked into CBS 8 the following day for my already scheduled first day on the job. Within 2 minutes, I was sent out on my first assignment.
The Red Cross needs volunteers to help those affected by the fire.
That's me live on the air for the first time in my hometown from Mira Mesa High School, which had been turned into an evacuation center. Some of the people we spoke with that day showed up to volunteer. Others had no idea if their homes were still standing.
Can't really say it's comfortable, but it's just waiting until you can finally go see what's going on where your house is.
It was an unrelenting disaster. It was a day full of adrenaline, and for so many of us, it was a true trial by fire.
Reporting live from Mira Mesa High School, I'm Heather Myers. Back to you in the studio.
All right, thanks, Heather. And now here is
Our Marcel Lee recently sat down with former longtime CBS 8 anchor Barbar Lee Edwards, who shared her memories of the firestorm. She'd been here as a main anchor for about 2 years at the time and got the call early on a Sunday morning to get into work, leaving her husband, young daughter, and 2-month-old son at home to drive into work through ash gray skies. Barbar Lee spent nearly 10 hours in this studio that first day, bringing vital news to San Diegans.
This is Local 8 News at 6.
Good evening and welcome to Local 8 News at 6 o'clock as you join us for our continuing coverage of San Diego on fire. I'm Barbar Lee Edwards. This situation.
It's been 20 years.
Yes.
What are your memories from the first day of the fires?
The first day of the fire I remember really vividly. These are pictures from the Scripps Ranch area where at least 150 homes have been destroyed. You have this sense of, my God, this is awful. We need to cover this. We need to let people know. We need to warn people.
You are in danger. You need to leave the area immediately.
We need to tell them what they need to do. We need to help. And when we started getting information that there were fatalities.
9 deaths are being blamed directly on the fires.
It was devastating for everybody, and I couldn't even imagine what it was like for those families. You just did your best to keep carrying on with the job, the task at hand, because it was just such a vital service. People needed that information. That includes Kaiser. They have phoned us to say that they do want their employees to come in to work tomorrow. We're going to go down to Carlo Cicchetto now.
Let's stop and just react to this for a moment.
Well, this was some new guy, and we kept having trouble with his name. I may have called him Geppetto at one point. So we're going to head down to Otay Lakes now. Carlo Cicchetto has the latest on the situation down there. Carlos?
Yeah, Otay Lake is...
I got to know him a little bit, though, over the years, though, so now I know that is our Carlo Cicchetto, who, by the way, had been here for a matter of weeks when he was thrown out there to do this fire coverage. Like I'm saying, it was a learning experience for everyone. It was all hands on deck, and everybody did an amazing job. And of course, Jeff Zevely, solid as ever.
If you live in this area, your stuff is safe tonight.
What was your main goal?
To tie it all together. Even though the wind has died down and people are not allowed back at their homes. You know, a lot of people were emailing and saying things like, for animals that need to be evacuated, that you can bring them here. But then if anyone else hears about this, if you have food or anything that you can bring, we need more help in this area. So as we're covering the fire, we're also doing these incredibly important public service announcements. You just really felt the sense of how important it was that you were there for them. In the program, but right now we're going to go to one of the biggest and first evacuation centers set up today, and that was at Qualcomm Stadium. Our Beth Shelburne. We actually stopped going to commercial commercial break after a while.
Barbar Lee,
We just knew this was going to have to be wall-to-wall coverage. There was simply nothing more important than the information we were bringing people at that time. And because there was a lack of social media, you really wanted to get graphics up on the screen.
Nearly 600 homes have been destroyed.
And keep reminding people this is what's happening. We couldn't refer them to anything. We had to be that source of information.
It was a completely different time as far as technology is concerned.
And we also had to go over to the radio station and they would pick up our signal, because it's not like somebody could take their iPhone with them and then start streaming it once they got in the car. So we wanted to get the message out any way we possibly could. If you think about these people having to leave spur of the moment, but they don't know where to go, once they're in their car, how are they going to know where to go? So they started picking up our broadcast signal on radio as well.
And to see the images we're looking at now, watching homes burn down in real time.
Scripps Ranch has been so hard hit today, Heather.
How did you internalize that?
It was a whole mix of emotions, because a lot of people that were seeing their homes burn down really emphasized they're just glad everyone got out safely. But if you waited a second, you could see it was a little more than that when they turned back toward the devastation and you realize that everything is lost.
I'm devastated. I mean,
every emotional, valuable memento, baby pictures. A lot of people lost things that simply couldn't be replaced.
It took a while for the community to heal and recover.
It was just a big scar across the landscape, and it really drove home what a horrible beast fire is.
Now, many of you may be wondering how you can help.
We started the phone banks the next day. Everyone wanted to help. It's the one positive thing that can come out of something so devastating as the incredible sense of community in San Diego County. It's just amazing.
Anything else you want to reflect on?
Well, for me, I can honestly say that sort of set the tone for the rest of my career.
Wildfires still burning out of control from Escondido to Alpine.
I was sitting on the desk for the majority of the day with the late, great Michael Tuck, who was the consummate professional and so good at covering breaking news that I actually felt a sense of calm covering this crazy breaking tragedy with him, because he was so in control.
And that is our news for now. We thank you very much for joining us.
And I would like to think that after that day, I was able to take a bit of that with me in stories and events that I covered in future years.
Marcel Lee, CBS 8.
As Barbar Lee mentioned, I had only been working in San Diego for 3 weeks when the fire broke out. I was still getting familiar with the county, and I had never covered any kind of natural disaster in the field. As it turned out, I was our first reporter on air that day, basically a San Diego rookie. Fortunately, I was paired up with an incredible veteran photographer.
Carlo, tell us where you are.
I'm in Eucalyptus Hills, Beth, just above the 67. It's an eerie scene here.
I hit the air a little after 8 in the morning on October 26, 2003.
This home we came up on just about an hour ago. It was just starting to burn, and as you can see, there isn't much left here.
There was already a horrific trail of destruction, with homes burned to the ground all around. But I did find some hope, with a few people fighting to save other homes.
When you got here, how close were the flames? Were they already here?
Everywhere. Just everywhere. Everything over here. I'm surprised that house is still there.
The next stop was Blossom Valley.
Wind's blowing me out. I can't hear you clearly, but all I can say is it's very windy here.
Turbocharged winds pushed flames up hills with frightening speed. Homes were consumed in minutes, and we found a man who rushed to the area just to check in on his customers in the neighborhood to see if they needed help.
She wasn't home, so I came here to help people that were trying to save this house. And we were here, I was here for about 2 to 2.5 minutes, and the 60 to 80 foot flames just overtook us, and we just ran.
Fire damage was random, with homes turned to cinder yards away from others unscathed. And the firestorm wasn't just destroying homes, it was shattering lives.
And this house is where all the church groups come, the teachers' parties, every birthday party. We've had 6 weddings here. It's just everybody's house.
What you saw on camera was devastating. What I saw behind it taught me all about commitment to the job. So what do you remember most about what Ben was asking you to do that day? What was important to him?
He really wanted to make sure that
His family was safe, his dogs were safe.
This is Gavin Cutshall. His late father, Ben, was the photographer I worked with that day.
It looked a moment ago like it was going to engulf that gazebo that photographer Ben Cutshall's focusing in on there.
A 4-decade KFMB veteran at that point, he had seen it all. Ben's body and mind were with me in the East County, covering the fire so that San Diegans could see and understand for themselves exactly what was happening. But his heart was here in Scripps Ranch, the neighborhood that he called home. Ben's wife, Donna, and the dogs were safe and ready to move out if the fire got too close. Ben would call her between our live shots to check in repeatedly throughout that day. Fortunately, his son Gavin lived close by and was ready to help, understanding Ben's commitment to the job at hand.
There was always a sense of pride in me in whatever I could do to support what he was doing. What he was doing was not only important to him as a person, but it was important especially to what was going on here.
Ben's home was spared and we kept reporting, and he kept teaching.
This fire is just moving so rapidly. Those flames were just over the lip of a hill just moments ago, about 40 seconds ago.
Lessons like keeping the news van pointed to safety and running in these situations. A UT photographer showed us an image of how close flames came to us.
We were getting ready for a live shot in a matter of 2 minutes. It had covered those 75 yards and we had to bug out of there quickly.
This would be, to that point, the most intense coverage I would ever be involved in. An accelerated apprenticeship that ended in El Cajon, about 17 hours after it started, with the fire still raging and no end in sight.
But as you can see on the ridge behind me, the flames do appear to be picking up a little bit. That could push the flames over the hill into more residential areas, Michael, and it's just a wait we're going to have to sit through the night to see what happens and where we start the battle in the morning.
And Ben wasn't the only one at CBS 8 worried about their loved ones. Jeff Zevely's wife, Heather, was a reporter here 20 years ago. She, along with producer David Goffredson and photojournalist Scott Hall, were on Semelon Boulevard in Scripps Ranch, going up and down the street, keeping track of what was standing and what wasn't. It was remarkable coverage. Jeff took Heather back recently to reflect.
The Cedar Fire was first reported at 5:37 p.m. on October 25, 2003. And by the next morning, thousands of Scripps Ranch residents had been evacuated from their homes, while something precious to me was heading right here.
Barbar Lee and Dan, it's a raging inferno right now. I'm going to have Scott go off of me so you can see exactly what's going on. We've got the garage fully engulfed.
In 2003, when a firestorm struck Scripps Ranch,
Fire on both sides of the road.
my wife Heather Lucas and photojournalist Scott Hall
And so I think we're going to step back, actually. Scott wants to step back.
were dangerously close to the flames and at one point had to run for safety.
That was scary. I think we took cover behind cars.
There were walls of fire that day coming over the hills from Ramona, leaving the sky an eerie orange with smoke and ash so thick you could barely see the sun.
It was daytime, but it felt like nighttime.
Thousands of residents in evacuation centers depended on our coverage that day, which showed detailed maps of where the fire was heading next.
Our Heather Lucas joins us with the latest on the situation. Heather, are you in the same spot you were before? Describe to us what's going on.
We sure are, Barbar Lee. We're actually on Semelon Road.
While Heather was in front of the camera reporting live, producer David Goffredson
There's some parts of this neighborhood that are only accessible by foot because there's hoses all over the place.
walked the neighborhood, writing down the addresses of confirmed homes on fire.
I'm going to give you a list of all the homes, if you can bear with me, on Birch Bluff Avenue that are destroyed. 10607, 10611, 10606.
At that point in my career, I had covered a lot of wildfires, but I had never seen a reporter, producer, and photojournalist go street by street, writing down specific addresses to homes and then broadcasting that out.
If you take a look down Fairbrook here, Fairbrook Place, this is just something you probably see in a movie. That's the only way to describe it. It's just complete devastation.
Houses were on fire, streets were closed, everybody's evacuated. But the police are letting in the people who need medication.
Scary coming back?
Yeah, it's really scary to see all your neighbors' houses burning down. Very scary.
deal with it. What do you do?
You just have to rely on your family and friends at this point.
Firefighters are doing all that they can.
At the time, in 2003, the Cedar Fire grew to be the largest wildfire in California history, destroying nearly 3,000 structures. You and I drove to work together that day. You were sent to the front lines. I was sent off to cover the effect of the fire on the roadways. So why don't we take a look at the I-15 again? And as I listened to where you were, I was very concerned for both of you.
Heather Lucas has been on the scene all day in Scripps Ranch, and she brings us the latest from where she is there. Heather?
That day we went street by street, trying to stay out of harm's way.
We're again on Kings Pine Road.
At one point, our crew tried to save a stranded dog.
I did see a little pug, a dog actually, standing right in the middle of a couple burned out homes.
I remember the dog, I remember the pug, but it's so sad. I do not remember if we were able to get the dog into a car.
We have one confirmed fatality to
14 civilians and one firefighter died in the Cedar Fire.
Well, Graham and Barbar Lee, we've moved over. We're now along Fairbrook Road.
Our live coverage continued into the night.
That day, watching the firefighters, watching them risk their lives, something clicked in me, and I thought, I want to be part of that community.
Heather changed careers and went to nursing school to become a registered nurse at Kaiser Permanente, hoping to be part of the solution for San Diegans should disaster strike again.
I'm so happy to look around and see all of these beautiful homes, the beautiful canyon areas. It's just amazing to think how far this community has come.
In the Zevely Zone, Jeff Zevely, CBS 8.
If and when wildfire strikes again, firefighters will be better prepared. CAL FIRE is doing things differently now, largely because of lessons learned during the Cedar Fire. CBS 8's Brian White has more on what went wrong and what has changed.
Looking back at all the devastation caused by the Cedar Fire 2 decades ago, we're taking a look at what we've learned since then and how firefighting techniques and coordination have evolved since then.
We'd had big fires before, but nothing like the Cedar Fire, that just how quickly it expanded and got into populated areas.
Fire Chief Tony Meacham for CAL FIRE in San Diego County, thinking back to the Cedar Fire. I asked him what he remembers most.
I think just how overwhelmed we felt that day. Waking up that morning and just realizing like we had a beast on our hands.
For what was at the time the largest wildfire in California history, burning 273,000 acres and nearly 3,000 homes, there were important lessons learned.
That fire is going to happen again, right? When the winds blow and the fuel conditions dry out. So what are steps that we can take as a community to not stop the fire, but lessen the impact?
San Diego's capability for attacking fire from the air has grown immensely over the years, with at least 13 copters in the county now capable of water drops.
Just the adrenaline and the excitement of seeing the flames and the smoke.
Pilot William Lenowicz is with the San Diego County Sheriff's Department. They have 3 helicopters in their arsenal and they contract with CAL FIRE.
The satisfaction that comes with seeing the big flame ahead of you and getting to put the water on it and seeing it out is very rewarding.
One huge advancement since the Cedar Fire is the ability to fight fires from the air at night. In 2003, fire officials followed safety rules that prohibited aircraft from battling wildfires in the dark, which allowed the Cedar Fire to spread rapidly overnight. Now, San Diego Fire Rescue has 2 twin-engine helicopters capable of night missions, and CAL FIRE can call on their night-flying copter from the Hemet Ryan Air Attack Base in Riverside.
The night vision goggles, the instrument in the aircraft, all of those things, the technology has got up that allows us to do those flight operations at a lower elevation where maybe there was concerns before.
The county formed its own regional fire department in 2008 to extend around-the-clock protection to unincorporated areas of the county, now serving 40 communities, including this new fire station that just opened up in East Otay Mesa. One thing's for sure, regional collaboration between agencies has evolved greatly.
We all train together, we work together, we operate, and We've kind of said it doesn't really matter the color of the fire engine or the patch. We're going to respond as the San Diego Fire Service.
Another tool that's making a huge difference in getting ahead of the firefight is the vast camera network CAL FIRE monitors.
As soon as we get a 911 call, we're looking at the cameras, and when we see a fire that looks to be developing, we're automatically sending additional equipment before the first fire engine even gets there.
With all the tools and assets and advancements since the Cedar Fire, I asked Chief Meacham what he thinks our vulnerabilities still are and what keeps him up at night.
There are still people today that live in wildland areas that don't do the clearance around their homes, that don't have a plan for when we ask you to evacuate, or that won't evacuate. And I think that's what troubles me is we can rebuild homes. The trees and the brush are going to grow back, but we can't replace human life.
I'm Brian White for CBS 8.
The Cedar Fire was started by a novice hunter from West Covina who became lost in the wilderness south of Julian and was trying to signal for help. CBS 8's David Goffredson looks back at the price he paid and what he had to say for himself.
Mr. Martinez, do you have anything to say about the indictment? It took almost a year for a grand jury to indict West Covina resident Sergio Martinez on charges of starting the Cedar Fire in October 2003.
Do you have anything to say to the people of San Diego?
No comment. Martinez initially pleaded not guilty in federal court to charges of setting a fire on forest land and lying to investigators about how it started.
No comment, no comment.
Martinez said he became lost on a hunting trip south of Pine Hills near Julian and initially claimed the fire was started by a gunshot ricochet. It was later determined he set the fire on purpose as a signal fire so he could be rescued. More than 2,200 homes were lost and 15 people killed, including a firefighter.
It was pretty devastating.
Some homeowners who lost everything were glad to see criminal charges filed.
These issues ourselves are responsibilities. These are the responsibilities of rebuilding that I have to face. He has to face the responsibility of what he did too.
Others who lost their homes said they did not blame Martinez.
It was purely, I'm sure, an accident. He didn't mean for that, and how bad he would feel. We have no hostility or anger towards him at all.
Local politicians also weighed in.
This will send a strong message that if you commit an intentional act of setting a fire and you lie to the officials about it, that you are going to suffer consequences. You are going to be held accountable for your actions.
Well, it's hard to send a message to stupid people, so that's always going to be a problem. And in this case, do I think other idiots will get the message? I can't say that for sure. But I do think that this person committed a stupid act, and it's a crime, and he needs to pay for his actions.
In March 2005, Martinez reached a plea deal with prosecutors, pleading guilty to one felony charge of starting the fire. He was still facing up to 5 years in prison and spoke publicly for the first time outside court.
I'm just real nervous, and I have faith in God that everything's going to work out okay. And I'm not this negative person that I've been portrayed as in the media at all.
During his sentencing hearing, Martinez spoke for more than an hour in federal court.
In the courtroom, Martinez told the judge and victims he was sorry over and over,
telling federal judge Roger Benitez he ran out of water on his hunting trip, fell down, and lost his prescription glasses. Afraid he was going to die in the wilderness, he finally set a signal fire, which got out of control.
There's not a day that I don't pray for the victims, their souls, or people who lost their property. I wish there was something I could do to help them. I wish I could meet with everyone on a one-on-one basis so they can see what kind of a person I am.
Before sentencing, Judge Benitez said hunters are taught to light signal fires if they get lost, and there was no criminal intent. He sentenced Martinez to 6 months in a work release program, 5 years probation, and 40 days of community service. Martinez did successfully complete his probation. I recently reached out to his attorney, who is also his cousin, wanted to get an update on his life, but I did not hear back. At the downtown courthouse, David Goffredson, CBS 8.
The Cedar Fire forced the shutdown of San Diego State University. Our Shannon Handy was a college student there at the time and never thought that when she woke up that morning, it would change the course of her future.
So I was a senior at San Diego State. I was living in Pacific Beach at the time, and we woke up and ash was falling from the sky. We knew there were fires going on, but they seemed pretty distant up until that point. And then we found out that campus was closed for the day. So we all gathered at a friend's house and we watched the news.
This fire is just moving so rapidly.
Nowadays with news, you can get any information you want in the palm of your hand within seconds. Back then, it wasn't like that.
A totally dark day here in San Diego. We've been talking to you, many of you, all day long.
I just remember that sense of relying on these journalists that were on the TV because we were so desperate for information.
The fire has moved down the slope. It's really moving into this canyon quickly.
I was a communications major, so I always knew I wanted to be a journalist or a reporter. But this really solidified it.
Biggest problem, aside from the flames and the wind and everything else, is just not enough resources.
And I remember vividly watching these newscasters, for example, the anchors, they had paper scripts all over the anchor desks, and the scripts would just keep showing up and piling up, and I remember it would go on for hours.
We have a live news conference unfolding right now. We're told there is Mayor Dick Murphy to bring us up to speed on what's happening right now.
For so long, I looked at journalists as these stoic people, almost robotic, right? But when you watch the anchors, and especially the reporters, you saw the human side of them.
People continue to come down here to Qualcomm Stadium under very stressful conditions.
We were all getting informed. We were all learning where we could go for help, but you were also seeing the human behind that camera, in front of that microphone, and I thought, that's what I'm going to do.
And I personally saw 6 houses burning. I talked to a firefighter who said he'd seen at least 10 more.
I was interning at a radio station at the time, and there was an event at Qualcomm several weeks after the fires to thank the first responders. And I was there working, and I remember seeing one of the local stations that I had been watching. They had a tent set up, and the anchors were there. And I walked up to one of the anchors. I told her that her coverage inspired me, and I said, I want to do what you do. And she looked at me and she said, then do it, very sternly. And she gave me a business card with a name and a number, and she said, call this person on Monday. And I did. From there, I got an internship. I not only interned at this station, I worked there for a few years, and then I went on to become a reporter.
The group wasn't as large as organizers would have liked.
What I witnessed 20 years ago, watching the news during the Cedar Fire coverage, has stayed with me to this day.
You can see, obviously, the wind is whipping around.
As a journalist, it's important to inform and help the public, but it's also crucial to be a human while you're doing it. Be empathetic. When you're out there and people are losing everything and there's destruction around you and heartbreak, just a lot of loss, don't forget who you are as a human.
Now, before the Cedar Fire ever burned a home, it torched thousands of acres of chaparral and forests. Looking at the burned landscape, it was hard to imagine how Mother Nature would ever recover. Meteorologist Sean Stiles was part of our coverage during the Cedar Fire and has more now on nature's resilience.
The Cedar Fire was first reported the evening of October 25, 2003. By the next day, the wildfire had exploded, driven by Santa Ana winds. Steve Harrigan first saw smoke.
Next thing you know, you can see the flames coming over.
The top of the ridge, we gotta go! We got about 2 minutes to get out of here. 2 minutes!
And then they started sending people in here. The cops are coming in, the fire people are trying to tell us to evacuate.
Those winds steered the flames to Scripps Ranch.
And the wind shifted, and it got to there, and it shifted the fire, and it shot it down through that valley, down towards Scripps Ranch, where it burned out all those houses down there.
And while the homes could be rebuilt, it would be a different story for the chaparral. Once the fire came through, this place was
burned out. burned out.
But what may look burned out is also a natural cycle for native plants.
We're starting to see new growth come.
CAL FIRE Division Chief Eric Just says Mother Nature can be amazingly resilient.
We'll have an area that's been burned. You could see plants, shrubs resprouting within months after the fire. It's surprising how fast, these natural species recover from fire.
In most cases, the natives return quickly.
And to the casual observer, within 4 or 5 years, it may not be recognizable that there ever was a fire there.
So Beeler Canyon was part of the Cedar Fire burn.
David Ross is a senior manager at Walter Anderson Nursery and explains why.
Why does this vegetation come back so plentifully?
Well, it's designed to do that. It's supposed to.
He showed us a plant that had been burned out in the Cedar Fire but survived.
So all of the old plant here is dead. Most of it, let's say, and then all of these other stems, all the green we see up here is just coming from the base, where it did not totally destroy the plant. It just killed everything that was above ground.
For natives to survive, wildfire needs to move through quickly.
When the fire came through, it probably burned the top growth, but as long as it, remember how fast, well, you know how fast the fire was going through here. You were trying to outrun it.
Yep.
I was watching you on TV.
And that's what the Santa Ana winds did, instead of a slow burn.
When it's moving through fast like that, it allows things to survive, because the fire spends less time on each individual plant. Now, it did wipe everything out here, but the majority of it has come back.
20 years later, that burn scar is thriving. The coyote brush is providing pollen and nectar for bees and butterflies. The scrub oak has returned and is big as ever. The buckwheat has bloomed and produced an abundance of seeds. And the rain from Tropical Storm Hillary has helped during the driest time of year.
In some areas, fire season is done for the year, but that's not everywhere. We've got microclimates and all kinds of other things in San Diego County, and so we're still not out of the woods on that regard.
Because it's fire season year-round in San Diego.
Sean Stiles, CBS 8.
And here at CBS 8, we are working for you to help keep you and your family safe the next time a big fire hits. To view all of our coverage on the 20th anniversary of the Cedar Fire, and for more information on a program that teaches homeowners about defensible space, just head to cbs8.com/wildfires. Thank you for watching.